Cool. Today we have Megan, who's going to share a little bit about her background, her story, and kind of how she got to where she's at now. Megan, do you want to maybe introduce yourself and maybe set the scene to where you are at before you ever heard what UX design was?
Sure. Okay, so hi, I'm Megan, as she said. I am a fine artist and a neurodivergent by birth. I am a organized artist and a graphic designer by training. I actually have kind of a strange background that brought me to UX UI design. So in 2016, I was fresh out of college. I had my bachelor's of fine arts degree. And I was going to go make it as an artist out in Los Angeles. I was going to do it.
Yeah.
Which is a valiant, a very noble quest, but fairly naive, and probably fairly naive on purpose on my part. Like I knew, that it's hard to get to your dream point, whatever that dream may be. So I figured, let's just go out there and figure it out. Flash forward, I worked in the movie industry. I did special effects makeup artistry out there for about 2 years, just before the pandemic. And ultimately, the pandemic shut a lot of stuff down, and we were required to, go home. All of the artists were kind of required to go back to their homes because there was no work, and it's was ridiculous to be out in such a big city. So anyway, I am, I moved back to the Midwest. I am from about 2 hours south of St. Louis. And I was pretty rural. So I was working in alternative healthcare, apothecary type situations, and still doing my artistry and my graphic design, on the side, freelance wise. I was trying to make a buck any type of way, as the true artist does. Doing graphic design here and there, doing wedding makeup here and there. Trying just to have like some sort of shift work. But it really wasn't working out for me well, and I was spending a lot of my time on Pinterest. And I kept getting these like ads for UX UI. Learn UX UI. UX UI is going to blow up soon. All these things, and I kept ignoring it, honestly. Until my mother's friend spoke to her about her daughter taking part in Avocademy, and how it was like 5 months until she was in like the best job she'd ever had. And it just seemed like a fairy tale type situation. That person is actually Radia, who works with you now. And Radia really got me on this track. So huge props and thanks to her, of course, for that. But she was like, you're kind of a jack of all trades. You're artistic, but you're organized. You know how to speak business, but you also know how to explain things at a kindergarten level, which is sometimes needed for
very important. Yeah.
So she was like, I think that you would enjoy this, if nothing else, it's 8 weeks of training, So yeah, that's where I was when I first came across Avocademy. I was very lost during the pandemic. Didn't really know where to go. Didn't know how to make money as an artist at all.
Yeah. So you said it was your mom's friend, right? Yeah.
It was straight up the grapevine.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and I love your background. And you mentioned this, but you kind of had like a mixture of like all of the skills that are like pretty important and honestly transferable to the career once you like get started and kind of see what the job is really like. When you decided, okay, I'm gonna try this, like, maybe it works out, maybe it's just 8 weeks, I learned something new. Did you look at other programs, or were you just like, oh, this got like a good rec, like this person was able to do it, so I'm going to do this one? Or like, what did that look like in terms of jumping right in?
Right. There were a couple of programs that were cheaper, but as I like researched into them, they can also look at those. As I researched into those, they didn't seem quite as, geared towards getting a job. Like they were training programs and platforms, and they had a lot of good information on there. I'm sure I could have, pieced things together. I think something that we've said during Avocademy was that you can look all of this information up yourself online. There is nothing stopping you from that. We link to things all the time in class. And so it's just who thinks about like what you need to like research for a new job. This was a situation where I knew that it was all laid out in a way that was easy to follow. I knew that there was a step by step, and I knew like from Radia's experience that once you followed the steps, you were going to get a job. It's just a matter of like tenacity and like keeping after it.
Yeah, so no, you make a good point. I think sometimes we have folks join the program and they're like, there's nothing novel here, and it's like, well, there's nothing novel about UX, right? It's like it's saving. When you sign up for a program, you're really saving time because someone has curated a curriculum, right? Of maybe it's the same content you can learn anything on YouTube, right? Like you could learn anything, but you never know if you're learning the right thing, or if you were supposed to spend 8 hours watching videos on user journeys, or if maybe the 10-minute video was like good enough, right?
Right.
So I love that you touch on that, because I really think like our special sauce is like putting it together in a way that's like easy to follow. And also kind of like a little bit of the accountability of like, we have our student success team kind of being like, hey, like you haven't submitted anything for a week. Hey, do you need help with this? Like, hey, what's coming up next? And then in Career Jumpstart, we have kind of like a lot of accountability around like how we help you track for jobs and all of that. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself. So you decide to join our program. How does it feel? You start, are you like what did I do? Why did I decide to do this? Or are you like excited? Like, how's your experience in the Foundations program?
So in the Foundations program, at first when I started, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this looks awesome. It's all set up. Like this is a online class. But had I stuck to the time frame I was supposed to stick to, I might not have felt so laggy, I guess, for lack of a better word. I took a long time to finish my first, like my Foundations course. So normally, they say you can get it done in 6 to 8 weeks. The first girl got it finished in like 4 weeks. Oh my gosh, she's a machine. Now that I've worked in it in a little while, like, oh yeah, I could probably do that in 4 weeks. Yeah. But at the time I was like, that's an insane time frame. And, for jumping into the real world of, having a UX UI position at a working like pharmaceutical supply company, it's a lot in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, however long it takes them to do it. But it's simple. It's not like it's a complicated issue. It's just the matter of you focusing in and learning it on your own pace. And that's what I had to do. Because I had moved back from California with a handful of debt and really no prospects. The only thing we could do at the time was sit on the computer and do stuff. So this was the next thing for me, basically.
Yeah, we've changed since you've gone through the program. We now offer like 16 weeks of mentorship, as like you have these full 16 weeks and kind of like a slower timeline to kind of get it done in those 16 weeks instead of pushing for that 8-week. There's still the 8-week versus 16 weeks kind of when you should be submitting assignments. But we've extended the mentorship for those full 16 weeks. Because we do see that people sometimes have things that come up, or they need to take a little break. It becomes a little bit too much to do. Yeah. So we received a lot of that feedback and kind of started changing the way that we do it. You can do it as fast as 4 weeks. You can take the time to do it in 16, but it's less pressure to like, oh, I'm not doing it in the timeline they suggested type of way, which I know is something that also kind of like builds up as you're going through the program. Mm-hmm. So you finished foundations. Tell us a little bit more, kind of what happened then.
Okay, so I finished foundations after I did end up taking 2 breaks in the middle. I took a break because I got an opportunity to work on a film, like a feature-length film, and I was like, I have to go. Like, I have to just drop everything and go. So luckily, you guys gave me the freedom that I needed in order to continue doing the learning, but do what I needed to do for money and career goals and that kind of thing. So after my couple, breaks there, I finished foundations. I decided I was going to try to land a job on my own without going forward with Career Jumpstart. So that actually, I think I tried that for about 2 or 3 months. I was, I was job searching, but maybe definitely not as hard as I was when I went through Career Jumpstart. Um, I just wasn't sure how much competition I would have. And ultimately, I needed more training on how to speak to my work. I needed more training on, like, I knew the aspects of it. I had been around graphic design enough to know like how to design in general. But I didn't really know how to speak on the backlog of like ideologies. So like, all of the things that we're quoting with your heuristic principles and like why we would do this for user stories and like all those specific things. So I decided that it was in my best interest, because I had gotten such good mentorship through Avocademy, that it was in my best interest to just continue with you guys and try Career Jumpstarts out, just to see what exactly that part of the program, what kind of value that could add to like my life. So thank goodness I did that. Thank goodness I did that, because I learned so much more. I mean, it just compounds,
Yeah.
So it was a really good opportunity, and I'm glad that I went that extra step, for sure.
When you were applying for jobs out of foundations, did you just have that one foundations project in your portfolio? Like what did your portfolio look like? And did you get any interviews? Like what were you getting interviews and then no's, or just no interviews? Like what was kind of the experience of applying without the CJ part?
Yeah. So I only had the one project on my CJ, or on the portfolio before I started CJ, and so that's what I was applying with, because I figured, I'm thinking to myself, oh, I've got one project. It's pretty good. I'm pretty good at interviewing. We'll talk about it and it'll be fine. And it was just it was too much. I was leaving too much to chance. I wasn't planning it out enough. There is strategy, and the strategy does work. So I definitely needed more to that. In fact, I've spoken with the teammates that interviewed me for the current position that I'm on. One of them let me know that my portfolio was even a little bit, maybe too, not too, but I didn't have enough on my portfolio when they went through it, but that it was good enough that they went ahead and took a chance on me. So, after doing all this extra work, and I have 3 more projects for a total of 4 projects on my portfolio right now, worked for weeks just to get the thumbnail colors right. I called Ronald one day and was like, please help me. What colors did you use? I'll use your colors. I don't even care at this point if it looks like my portfolio or your portfolio.
Ronald's amazing, so I'm glad he was able to step in and help you.
Yes.
Okay, so you had one project. You went out, applied. You were like, okay, I'm gonna get some mentorship. I'm gonna sign up for CJ. You mentioned you did 3 projects in CJ. Tell us a little bit more about your experience in the CJ projects. How did that work? We know sometimes they're not the smoothest, but there's a lot of learning opportunities as you're going through them. Share a little bit about your experience in those projects.
Yeah. So I worked on several projects. 2 of the projects were team lead experiences. So I got to lead the team, and be the liaison between the fellow designers and the stakeholders. For CJ, you do work with real life people, real life clients that have real life businesses they're trying to make
Yeah.
go. And so it matters to them a lot. And so, occasionally you'll have ones that work with you more than others. But I really felt like CJ doing everything in like a group project was where I learned the most valuable like skills for working remotely. I learned the basics in foundations and I learned, the terminology and stuff, but actually putting it into practice as like a working team member, that became way more prevalent in CJ than in foundations. And a little bit of that is because we're working in groups, but a little bit of that is also because at that point I had realized that like if you isolate yourself from the community that is learning next to you, you will ultimately feel very alone because we're human and we need socialization and sometimes you just need somebody else to be like, man, this design is not working, that sucks. Like, so
Yeah.
I really enjoyed being a part of a team, I think, and learning how to design as a team because it is different. And I'm now actually using that information and helping my team who's very used to XD and um, teams. I'm helping them move over to be a little bit more updated and working in Figma and, using the huddle feature in Figma so that we can chat, in real time. So it's been a good experience that has really been translatable to the real life world. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're teaching your team things. I think something we hear a lot is, oh, I'm not going to know enough. How am I going to find a job? I barely know anything. Like the imposter syndrome, like speak in your mind. And I share this often. You're not the first person to say like, oh, I'm teaching my team. Robin, who's one of our past students, was like the first week in my job, I was giving a presentation to like 100 some designers on how to use Figma because they didn't know. And what people don't realize is like in the work field, you're so focused on doing that a lot of people don't have the opportunity or don't take the time to learn the new tools. So you coming out of a program being like this fresh new designer, sometimes you know a lot more, technically speaking, than the folks, right, that have been doing the job for 5, 6, 10 years.
Yeah.
So I love that you mentioned that because we have a couple of folks, recent grads that are just like, oh, I'm teaching the team about all the new updates that just came out because they didn't know about it, or I'm teaching them moving entire design systems into Figma, or teaching them how to do dev handoff based of how we did it in the Moment Studio setup versus how they currently do it. So I love seeing that not only are you all like in new jobs, but you're like thriving and like educating the
Yeah.
existing team. Um,
Yeah.
so so
And
that's
they
amazing. Yeah.
agree with that. They kind of like on the one hand, they're a little bit jealous, right? Because they don't want the new guy to know more than them. The ones that have been there for years and years and they're used to the status quo and they don't necessarily need to learn anything. They're like 2 years from retirement. They're trying to
Right.
coast.
Yeah.
They need you as the new kid on the block to be able to translate from I'm a part of the millennial age group, and so we just oftentimes are generational translators. And
Yep.
so I definitely feel that way with this, and that's the thing is like with we may have gone to CJ and foundations for UX UI, but I feel like I left as a Figma expert, truly, as well. And I think by talking about that in particular, that got me the job, truly. Like, they needed somebody who could speak about Figma, who could teach about Figma, who could use Figma, and who just happened to might be able to just move their entire library from XD to Figma in a month. So, no
Yep.
big deal.
Yeah. Um, and I've heard that so many times, honestly, in the last couple months. And I love that that's, why y'all are getting those roles and that we're able to help, in one way or another. Tell us, a little bit about your job search experience. So like any right now the job market in any field is brutal. People coming right out of college are spending years trying to find their first job. So we know that specifically career changers, no matter your background, even if it's closely related like graphic design, sometimes struggle not only in how long it takes them to find a job, but really like the emotional roller coaster that it is to search for a job and just get rejections. So you had already attempted to look for a job for 2 to 3 months after essentially, being laid off and having to move. Like you had a lot of like job turmoil that you've shared with us. Tell us a little bit about how your job search was once you were inside of CJ. You finished those projects. Feel free to be as honest as you'd like.
Say something negative so they don't think it's No, I would say that imposter syndrome gets us all. Whether you're an artist, whether you're a scientist, whether you're IT, imposter syndrome is something we all have to deal with occasionally. I was speaking about that with my dad the other day. He's a geologist. He's like, listen, there are days that you just don't feel like you're good enough, and that's going to happen. But that pushes you the next day to keep learning, keep pushing, keep going. Yeah. So I would say for the job search process, I would hit it really, really hard for like 2 weeks, and I would get nothing in return. And so then I would take like a week and I would like get maybe 2 job applications done. We're supposed to hit 40 a week, which seems like a lot, but honestly, it really, you could get easy 200 jobs done in a month. So I really found that a lot of my conversations with like recruiters or with, first step interviews were with recruiters. That was really helpful to get me practiced on speaking about, my talents and speaking to my experience. But ultimately, I ended up getting a position for a job that I went and found out of the blue. I kind of went old school with my search after about 2 months. Yeah, after about 2 months, I went old school and I went driving in St. Louis where I wanted to have my job. And I just took a note of all the big buildings that still like were there and like lit up. Like if you have enough money to have a building completely empty during COVID and you still have it after COVID's closing down, like surely you have enough money to pay for a designer like me. That was my like logistical thinking, because as a makeup artist, like no one can afford makeup ever for anything. They're like, will you do this for a peanut butter sandwich and IMDb credit? And they know you're allergic to peanut butter. So, I've been very used to no one being able to afford to pay me a living wage. So I applied for one of those companies that I noted as I drove through the city, and that is a couple days later, I got a phone call from their HR. A week later, I got another interview. A week later, I got another one. And then the 4th week, I do believe I was hired.
Nice. So you just like went on all those websites and looked at their career pages and searched designer to see if anything would pop up.
Yep.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah. I messaged their internal recruiter who was hiring for the position on LinkedIn also. Nice. I tried to make my name pop up in every social area that it absolutely could for them.
Yeah, no, that's very smart. I think it's very much like the Yellow Pages approach, where you just kind of like go down like, what are the companies near me that I could apply to, and I love that. So you've been working for about a month-ish, is that right? Yep. Tell us a little bit about your job. How do you like it? Do you like it? Has your life changed in any way? Does it feel different?
Yeah. So I have been working since July 10th. So almost 2 months now, not quite. I'm enjoying it. I love it. It's not the on-set experience that I was used to, but as I've kind of mentioned, that on-set experience is kind of crap. I don't know if I can say that on this video, but
you can say it, yeah.
It's crap on set. And it was crap working for minimum wage. And so now that I'm sitting at home, I'm kind of doing the same schedule, if not even more relaxed than I was when I was doing Career Jumpstart. Um, I'm working mostly remote. My boss is in Boston, so he doesn't care if I come into the office at all.
So you
In
don't have to
the
go to
job,
the fancy building.
not if I don't have to. I will go once a week, usually there on Thursdays, but didn't go this week. We're having a heat wave, and I have a farm, so I had to keep the
Yeah.
animals watered. But yeah, no, I mean, today I'm literally unpacking, like, here's my brand new magic trackpad that they sent me for free.
Yeah.
Here's my massive, Apple keyboard with number pad that they sent me for free. I'm setting up my, like all these different, like, office equipment and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I feel cared for. There's a cafeteria at the building, which is amazing. You don't have to leave the building for lunch or for coffee. So it's a really nice experience to finally get into a job that feels like, oh, this is like a career. This is like paying me money to live my life the way I want to live my life, which is just, I didn't realize was such a blessing when I was going through college. I figured, jobs are just jobs and you get them and they treat you one way or the other and you go on. But I really didn't think that a job would be able to afford to treat their people nicely. I don't know. I guess came from a very like, I come from a very rural place where they have 15 employees and you're lucky if you get $20 for Christmas. Like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's not only what you're saying, which is like to be treated like with respect and
yeah,
like well and like be given, the fancy keyboard and the tech and all of that, but there's also a, for me at least, so I transitioned careers as well, and I remember being at a conference representing IBM, like for hiring. It was like a DEI type conference, and they like asked me if I wanted a rep, and someone asked me like, "Oh, do you enjoy your job?" And I remember like being so excited about like the work that I was doing. It wasn't super exciting work, but I was just like genuinely happy about it. And I paused afterwards and I was like, I think this is the first time I actually enjoy what I'm doing. Like I don't hate it. I don't like wake up in the morning thinking, oh, like another day of this thing or like whatever. Um,
hmm,
and it was that moment where I was like, oh, I'm not lying about liking my job for the first time ever, right? Like I actually enjoy the work. um so I love that you're talking about like being treated well and like the perks and just the tech culture that sometimes can be like portrayed negatively, but it's important, right? Like those things are important to feel valued and feel supported.
yeah.
So I'm glad you're getting to experience that.
Me too. It's nice to feel, it's nice to, like you said, you summed it up really well. Like it's nice to feel respected. I definitely, I feel like valued on the team. I feel valuable. Um, so it's a very nice change from where I was, which was scraping by and just being, the dark underbelly of society. That's where I worked for like 10 years. And so now to come out into the light and be welcomed by a community that I wasn't expecting to welcome me per se, because I do come from such a strange circus background that I wasn't expecting to be treated with as much respect right out the gate as I was. They are extremely extremely compassionate and extremely they've been working remote for 5 to 10 years, give or take for a few of them. So they're like, no, you got stuff to do, just like flex the time, like you got to go to a doctor's appointment, cool, make that hour up another day, but you don't have to take any, you don't have to take any time for that. So it's just being treated like an adult, I think,
Yeah.
that matters. And it takes a toll on you when you don't get that kind of treatment. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I know we're almost over time here, but I'd love to ask you one closing question before we wrap up.
yeah,
Is there any advice that you would give, Megan, from first hearing about UX design and a career in UX design, that maybe you wish you would have known, right, or something that maybe could have helped you through this journey?
yeah. Um, I think I would probably get in my little time machine and go back there and just shake her by the shoulders and say, the promised land does exist. You will get a job. It's coming so soon. With the imposter syndrome and just, 10 years of creative, angst, I just really needed someone to say to me that the promised land is out there. Keep chipping away at it. Everything I did up until this point was leading me to UX UI design, and I really truly believe that. Like, I was ignoring signs from the universe for about 10 years, and I finally started listening, and the UX UI popping up on Pinterest and the conversation from my mom's friend, they all just started bombarding me all at the same time, and I was like, I gotta listen to this. And I want to thank Megan from a year or so ago, for listening to those signs, because it really did get me to a paycheck I never dreamed I'd make. So, and thank you as well. Without you making that decision to change, careers and making the decision to start a whole program teaching people about this, you have not so single-handedly, I know you have a team, but like single-handedly, like taken a ton of people's hands and met them with their boss. And like you brought together so many people to a new solution to the pursuit of their own, happiness or whatever. So
yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words. You did the hard part, which was doing the work, but I appreciate the kind words.
On your own, but you started it, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for joining me today here and sharing your story. It's been great to kind of hear about your background and your entire journey and where you're at now. I can't wait. I mean, we're going to stay connected, but I can't wait to hear kind of how far you'll go and when you come back and hire some current CJ students and start growing your team.
Can't wait. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, but awesome. Thank you so much.